Shaker Towers has changed primarily in that you still have a very diverse tenant profile or ownership profile, but it's changed in that at times many of the residents were much older. Now it seems to be getting to be a younger base of residents. There are a number of new people who've moved in. There are different requests and demands for services than there were in the past, but still it's just a building that services the amenity, and it really has been consistent in that while the age of the demographics of the building have changed and gone back and forth, it's still always been one where basically the same interests have been continued through. And over all the years, that's really what the ownership originally and then
Do you know how I got the first black family moving into a section of Shaker Heights that had been totally white? I went to my board and I said, I've got to have help because I'm sending this family to get a mortgage at a bank that we know will not give mortgages to black people going into a white area. And they're going to be very threatened because this is a fairly upper middle class area and they won't want to deal with this. And I said, would any of you help me and call the president of a bank if you have a large deposit and say that if the family that's coming in that Stuart Wallace is bringing in for a mortgage, if they are qualified and you turn them down. It turned out we got a very wealthy member of our board. And she said, I happen to have $7 million in that bank. This was a godsend.
Dorothy Fulltime, who was the first woman broadcaster, lived in the building for many years. Carol Stokes, who was the first black mayor of a major city, and then went on to be a broadcaster in New York, and then came back to Cleveland and became a judge. Was a very interesting person and a person very close to us, and I had a wonderful relationship with Carl. And there were Zelma George, who was internationally renowned. There are just a lot of people throughout the years who've had a huge impact. People like Arthur Lelyveld, who marched with Martin Luther King in the early 60s and actually was very badly injured on one of his marches in Birmingham, Alabama.
There are three-quarter height doors in the laundry rooms that nobody really pays attention to. If you open those doors up, they wind their way around on the front of the building, underneath the building as well as out into the yard itself too. So they're unusual shaped tunnels, and it's like a child going through a maze. It was a lot of fun doing that, and it's really interesting because we have to use them still on a regular basis to go in there to check for valves or to make sure we don't have leaks, and it is something that's integral for the building. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this building is a building of community and always has been. From the time it first started, it was intended to be, and it always has been, in that it has attracted people who've moved into the building who've then attracted their friends or family members to move in. You have a number of people who are related living in different units in the building, and always have. It seems to have always been the case from the time it was a rental as through the time it was converted to a condominium.
Walk around the square. When the trolleys go by, I wave at them. Some of the guys know me. I walk my grandson. That's who you heard hollering on the phone. I was watching him. And they wave at us and toot the horns, I love this place.
And the moment I stepped into the lobby of Shaker Towers, I knew, without having seen a unit, I knew this was the place I wanted to live.
Well, I think one of the most interesting things about my getting older at 91, Shaker Towers, because of their fully attended garage and their lovely porters, almost offer what I would call assisted living.
To the treatment, we went to France on a barge tour. We came back. I went to work. One day I came home, and she said, I walked around Shaker Lake, the lower lake. It's like a miracle. So that, in addition to the other things we liked, meant that we had the lake in a way that we hadn't expected to have. So that's another real plus for us for this neighborhood. I mean, the lake down there, the lower lake is just great.
Well, Mr. Kane was on the board. He was one of the original, or maybe not the original, but in the early boards of the Condominium Association. And there was always, and later on his wife Lillian Kane was on the board. There were a number of people who were very influential in Cleveland society who lived in this building, very well-known people. Zelma George, because she was so well-known internationally. And she actually spent a lot of time writing books here in the building and out on the deck. Once the garage roof was converted to a garden, she sat out there quite a bit and did a lot of writing out there.
That's a nice story.
Well, my family has been involved with Shaker Towers since the mid-1960s. My father had a company called Metropolitan Management in the 1960s and managed the building as a rental building. It was later sold by my father and my uncle, Carl Glickman, to Al Weisberg.
But now we see more and more children, and it's not just the grandchildren visiting. Because I remember bringing my daughter when she was very young to visit my grandfather, and she would go out on the garden deck and play and just run back and forth. And it's become a more attractive place.
And I knew I did not want to be in a huge new place or one of the really expensive brand new places that are going up. So I met Joanne Kaufman at a party. We started talking, and I told her that I was looking in the Shaker Square area, and I was very frustrated because my realtor kept trying to send me out into the hinterlands. And she said, well, I said, I really would like to live somewhere near Shaker Square. I told her I'd been looking, and she said, well, you don't want to live there. You want to live in Shaker Towers.
The first thing I noticed when we got here was the train stops in front of the door. And I said, you know, we got to find me a unit in this building.
The range of possibility for people of all ages to live in this building really has been here since day one. A good friend who later bought a house, their child was born here, and they raised that child here until they bought a house. Then at the other end of the spectrum, of course, we have people who are older because of the fact that many of us did come here as empty nesters. And that's a natural for apartment and condominium living, I think. But it has been very accessible. For me, the back stair railings are just the right width to walk down those stairs. So even though...
In an emergency, that is. You
Well,
darnedly
even
don't
though,
do that.
well, that could be something that people don't grasp. But that is one thing. Secondly, we built a ramp on the first level so that people in wheelchairs and walkers could meet that challenge. And so it is that people are more than willing. The other thing is that because we have only 4 people on a floor, you don't have these long hallways that you have in so many other buildings. That was one of my criteria, actually.
A wonderful place for younger people too. We had a very large condominium at Walden, and it's nice to have something that's a little more manageable and to have a very nice community. We've loved it here.
When we moved into this apartment has a back, I don't know if you call it a bonus room if you were a real estate agent, that had a full-size washer and dryer in it that had been grandfathered in, that basically took up practically the whole room. And I had them taken out and started using laundry in the basement. And actually that's been really fun, because then you meet all the people who, wash their clothes down here. It's a great place for gossip if you ever want to hear what's going on.
And Shaker Towers at that time was accessible, absolutely no steps from the garage to the condo, to the apartment. But there were other steps, and then later on we even ironed those out. So now we have no steps except for the garden, which I can still negotiate.
Because, it has great views on 3 sides. You see downtown Cleveland, you see Cleveland Heights, and what I'm not sure of, I think it's 7 Hills that I can see out on the south side. So it's really beautiful, especially for the sunsets. In this building in the beginning, when it was built and shortly after that, people moved from big houses in Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights here. That's one of the reasons that this layout is so good for people who have lived in houses, because if you can't go upstairs, at least you can go down the hall, so you think you're going somewhere.
The things that I liked about this was the fact that I could garden. That was important to us. And when you are living on the 11th floor and you have a garden on the second floor, you have to figure out how you're going to do it. And because you want the garden in the house, one of the things if you're growing flowers, you grow them so you can see them in the yard, but you also want them in the house, and so we have to bring them up. And I very quickly learned that I only want to plant and nurture flowers that can be brought up, that